So ownership concentration refers to three internal governance mechanisms to monitor and control managers' decisions. So ownership concentration is defined by both the number of large block owners and by the total percentage of the firm's shares that they own. So that's an important thing to just keep in mind. Who has more shares and who has more higher percentage, the total higher percentage out of the total number of shares possible. And large block shareholders are investors who typically own at least 5% of a company's issued shares. So the idea of diffusing ownership is important because when ownership concentration, obviously it influences decisions made by the strategies a firm will use, then they can drive decisions from top executive leadership that can influence their own self-serving interests as a shareholder. So we can see that diffusing the ownership, where a large number of shareholders who have small holdings, and we have very few large block shareholders, can produce weak monitoring of managerial decisions because we don't have enough power within that group of shareholders with small holdings to influence executive level decisions. It makes it difficult for owners to coordinate their actions, and it can result in levels of diversification that are beyond the optimum level desired by shareholders. So it's actually beneficial to have some of those large block holders. In recent years, large block ownership by individuals has declined, but it's been replaced by significant positions held by institutional owners. And now we'll see institutional owners be large block shareholders controlled by financial institutions such as stock mutual funds, pension funds. Institutional owners now control over 50% of the stock in large U.S. corporations and approximately 56% of the stock of the 1,000 largest U.S. corporations. These ownership percentages suggest that as investors, institutional owners have both the size and the incentive to discipline and effective top-level managers so they can influence the firm's choices and strategic decisions. Initially, the shareholder activists and institutional investors concentrated on performance, accountability of CEOs, and contributed to the ousting of some of those. They're now targeting what they believe are ineffective board of directors instead, and we see a trend in that direction. Institutional activism has potential to discipline managers and to enhance the likelihood of a firm taking future actions that are not only in shareholders' best interests, but also those of all stakeholders, including the larger society. Shareholder activism refers to actions that shareholders take with the intent of influencing corporate policy and practice. Initially, shareholder activists and institutional investors concentrated on the performance accountability of CEOs and contributed to the impact of their employment in the organization. But more recently, activists have targeted the actions of boards by directly through proxy vote proposals that are intended to give shareholders more decision rights because they believe board processes have been ineffective. So sometimes activist investors join forces in what are called wolf packs, led by one of the activists, often a hedge fund, with other activist investors engaging in these peripheral activities. So the board of directors is a group of elected officials whose primary responsibility is to act in the owner's interest by formally monitoring and controlling the top level executives. When the board is appropriately structured and operating effectively, it can protect owners from managerial opportunism. Shareholders elect the members of a firm based on directors. Evidence suggests that some boards have been particularly effective in monitoring and controlling top level manager decisions, and they're expected to increasingly provide resources to the firm. So there's a debate that generally rages between kind of scholars and business executives regarding whether top managers and boards should give shareholders of an organization a higher priority than stakeholders when making decisions. Societal trends are among the most important factors that are moving top managers and boards in the direction of a more balanced view of the stakeholder-oriented responsibilities. Evidence exists that top executives have adopted a more stakeholder-oriented approach. Other evidence, though, demonstrates that the tides of opinion are changing and found that there's an increasing popularity of benefit corporations. The corporate bylaws of a benefit corporation state that is a benefit corporation is that top managers and directors must consider other public benefits beyond profits. So the makeup of a board of directors can be classified in these three ways. So first is insiders. And generally, insiders are represented by the firm's CEO and other top-level managers. So they work within the organization. Related outsiders are individuals who are not involved in day-to-day operations, but they have a relationship within the company. Examples can include the firm's legal counsel, a large customer, a supplier, a close relative of one of the firm's top-level managers. And outsiders are individuals who are independent of the firm. They're not involved in day-to-day, nor do they have any relationship within the firm. An example of the outsider might be a president of a university or a community volunteer that impacts the organization. So there are benefits and drawbacks to having insider-dominated firms. And because they work with and lead the firm daily, they have access to information that facilitates forming and implementing appropriate strategies. However, there's a widely accepted view that the board with a significant percentage of membership from insiders provides relatively weak monitoring and control. We lose our checks and balances, basically. Because of this, many critics advocate reforms to ensure that independent outside directors are a significant majority of a board's total membership. Having outside directors is not always enough to resolve agency problems because powerful CEOs can strongly influence boards' decisions. One proposal to reduce the power of the CEO is to separate the chair's role and the CE's role on the board so that the same person does not hold both positions. CEO duality can be associated with high firm performance during a time of high economic policy uncertainty, perhaps because the unification of these two roles of CEO and chairperson provided more decisive leadership. The drawbacks are also important because outside directors do not have day-to-day contact with the ongoing operations. They may need to obtain detailed and in-depth information that puts a strain on the management in order to give them the information they need in order to make good decisions, generally at board decision meetings. In the absence of that great information, boards have to emphasize financial rather than strategic controls, and this can potentially mean that the outsider-dominated boards, because they don't have enough information, will evaluate managers based not on the basis of the appropriateness, but on the financial outcomes of those actions. Some evidence suggests that boards with a critical mass of insiders typically are better informed about intended strategic initiatives. The demand for improved performance and greater accountability is stimulating many boards to make changes, such as to increase diversity and background of the members on their board, strengthening internal management and accounting control systems, and increasing attention to issues of corporate social responsibility. Establishing and consistently using formal processes to evaluate board performance, modifying the compensation of directors, especially reducing or eliminating stock options as part of their compensation package, and creating a lead director role that has strong powers with regard to board agenda and oversight of the non-management board activities. We'll also talk about executive compensation, which is a mechanism that seeks to align managers and owners' interests through salaries, bonuses, long-term incentive compensation packages such as stock options. Sometimes the use of these long-term incentive plan prevents major stockholders from pressing for changes because they assume that long-term incentives ensure that those top executives will act in the shareholders' best interests. Alternatively, stockholders largely assume that top executive pay and the performance of a firm are more closely aligned when firms have boards that are dominated by outside members.